it's like this, in spite of the fact that I really don't have what to say about the Miron tragedy, but nevertheless, not to mention it at all is feels kind of disrespectful, maybe. Might even seem like encouraging carelessness. So I feel like I do have to say something. And I was thinking that one of the three simonim that define the Jewish people is Rachmanim, right? It's one of the defining characteristics of Yidden is that they have Rachmanis, they have mercy, compassion. And I think that this story just serves as a painful reminder of how much we lost this character trait, because it takes something so huge to evoke feelings of Rachmanis. In truth, I mean, each one of the individuals who lost his life, it makes no difference to him that others also lost their life. I mean, it's a personal tragedy. His family, his wife, his children, his parents, I mean, their life was turned upside down. I mean, each one is enough to be a tremendous Rachmanis, but we became so apathetic and we were so removed from the Midas HaRachmanis that we only respond and hopefully respond to something of such proportions. So I think we should take from this the limud, first of all, to be mechazik within ourselves the midah of Rachmanis, the midah of Rachmanis, the midah of noisei ba'oil im chaveiroi, of mishtatev b'tzaharam shel acherim, even when it's just an individual. Every individual is an oilam mole, and it's not only about matters of life and death. Everybody is surrounded by people that are suffering on various levels, and we should pay attention. We should pay attention. We should take it to heart. We should try to help, make it easier. And that's one thing that this drives home. People ask, why did it happen? Why did it happen? I mean, do we have the tools to understand, to know? I mean, life we do understand. It's death that we don't understand. I mean, we want to understand with our mind. I mean, do we understand our mind? I mean, our brain has weight, has size, even has color, and it facilitates a mind that has no weight, that has no size, that has no color, can't be measured, can't be weighed. We understand the relationship between our brain and our mind. So how do we even have the expectation to be able to understand with our mind things that are far beyond our comprehension? So I'm saying that the expectation that we should understand how the Rebbeinu Shalom runs the world is unreasonable, and it's illogical. I mean, people talk about karbonis. I mean, I just want to say it really irks me, because karbonis, it became a word for victims. But once it became a word, so it became sacrifices. And then there's also karbonis tzibur. I mean, as if we believe in the Moilach. I mean, there's no such a thing as human sacrifices in Judaism. I mean, people are not karbonis, and for sure they're not karbonis tzibur. So even if sometimes it could serve as tanchumim shel hevel, it's not justified. The Marshal says in Bava Kama that falsifying Torah is Yehorig Val Yavar. So Avada, we shouldn't be saying, such kind of nonsense. It doesn't require much humility. I mean, simple logic tells us that we don't have the tools to understand these kind of things. Avada, according to the Rishonim that argue with the Rambam and hold that even that not only select tzaddikim on mushgach b'hashgacha pratis, but every individual is mushgach b'hashgacha pratis. It's impossible for us to understand how a mass stampede can also include individual cheshbon with each one of the people that are affected. But the fact that we don't understand it doesn't say anything about the objective truth of the matter, because we shouldn't expect to understand how the Rebbeinu Shalom runs the world. It's plain and simple. It's plain and simple. That's the truth. You know, why bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people? I mean, it's a question that the Nevi'im, who were Nevi'im, didn't understand. Allah is kama v'chama, we that don't even have a glimpse behind the curtain. And from this side of the curtain, we really understand nothing. But one important thing is, like, you know, the Gemara says in Lamaisa, the Gemara says in Mesechtes Psachim, Daf Samach Daled Amud Beis, you know, there's two versions in the Mishnah as far as what they did on Erev Pesach in the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara says, Itmar, Abaye Omar Nina Lutnan, that the doors of the Azara closed on their own. Rava Omar Noya Lintnan, that they shut the doors in order not to allow more than enough people into the Azara. My Beinayu, Zok the Gemara, Ike Beinayu, Lemismach Anisse. The Machloike says if you could be Saimach Alanes, Abaya Omar Nina Lutnan, that it happened by itself, because when the crowd crushed the door, Kama da Ailu Malu v'Samchinen Anisse, Rava Omar Noya Lintnan, v'Loi Samchinen Anisse, that they had to lock the door and you're not Saimach Alanes. Now we paskin like Rava Kiyadua, and besides for the 6 Yal Kigam, we paskin like Rava that ain't Samchinen Alanes, and it's mistaver that even Abaya that said Samchinen Anisse, he only said it in the context of the Mikdash. Asor Anissim were in the Beis HaMikdash, but he wouldn't say that Yisamchinen Anissa anywhere else. But in any case, we're not Saimach Alanes, and therefore, Avada, we should be avoiding overcrowded places because it requires Samchinen Anissa, and we're not Saimach Alanes. And Mamela entering a place like that is a chash of roidif and a chash of pikuach nefesh, and that's something that we should take away from this event. I mean, to stay away from overcrowded places. Not chas v'sholem to blame those individuals. I mean, because you know, it's a whole culture. I mean, it's also not to blame the people in charge. I mean, maybe they do have blame, they don't have blame, but that's not our issue. Our issue is to do what we know is right and to avoid.
I guess the question is, what's considered overcrowded?
It's not a question.
Garibus matters can get crowded too.
Okay, listen.
Where do you draw the line?
I think that there's a logical line that can be drawn by most people, and one is responsible to draw the line. I mean, it's and anybody who was in Miran in the last years knows that it was way past the line, and every year they said it's a nes. If it's a nes, so we have a halach of ein samchin ala nes. I mean, you're not allowed to go there. Okay, now it also avada serves as a yaskilo yom hamisa. I mean, reminds us how temporary life is, and that we should cherish life and be thankful al kol neshima u'neshima, and we should make every day meaningful, and we should do as much as we can as long as we're here, and that's it. So in this week's parsha, in the second of this week's parshas, it says, "Im Bechukosai teilechu, ves mitzvosai tishmeru v'asisem oisom." So Rashi says, "Im Bechukosai teilechu, yochol ze kiyum hamitzvos." If this is referring to the kiyum hamitzvos, kashu oimes ves mitzvosai tishmeru harei kiyum hamitzvos omur. All mitzvahs are included in mitzvosai tishmeru. Homani mekayim im Bechukosai teilechu. Shetiu amelim b'Torah, that you should toil in Torah. So the obvious question is, how do we know that it is about Amelim b'Torah? Maybe it's just about Limud HaTorah. And the obvious answer is because learning Torah is also one of the Tafrei Yud Gimel mitzvahs, and it's included in Mitzvosai Tishmeru. So we say that it must be that Bechukosai Telechu is talking about something that is not a requirement mikoyach the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, but it's a requirement in Talmud Torah that goes beyond the mitzvah, and that's amelim b'Torah. That's amelim b'Torah, because in mitzvahs there's no din of amelus. Somebody can shake the lulav without amelus. There's no inyan in no intrinsic value in amelus in mitzvah shofar. If he can get a shofar that blows better. So in Torah, there's a maila of amelus. And that's before in the Rambam in Parshas Mishnayos Bemis that says in Sof Perek Hey of Ovis, when Ben Hey says Lefum Tsaro Agro, the Rambam says that it's talking about Talmud Torah. So also in Hilchas Talmud Torah Perek Gimel, the Rambam says V'haschar Lefi Atzar, and that's in Hilchas Talmud Torah. Seems like this is something unique and special in the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, and that's the yesod of Pas B'melach Toichal Umayim B'msura Tishte V'chayi Tzar Tichye Kachi Darko Shel Torah. This is something that's related to Limud HaTorah in particular. Now, we still need to understand why this is expressed in the lashon of Halicha. In Bechukosai Telech, and why is it taka that dafke in Torah we have a mile of amelus and not in other mitzvahs? In the Torah's Kohanim in the beginning of this week's parsha, it says v'hashimoisi, and Parshas Bechukosai, it says v'hashimoisi es migdashechem. The pasuk says, Ashtis, it means I will make your mikdashos, your sanctuaries, desolate. V'hashimoisi es migdashechem. Says the Torah's Kohanim, yochol min hakorbanos. Do you think it means that there won't be korbanos? The seif of this pasuk says, and I will not smell the reach nichoyach, the pleasant odors of the korbanos. No, hari korbanos amurim. It steht doch showing that there won't be korbanos. Omani mekayim v'shimoisi es migdashechem min hagdudiyos. Min hagdudiyos. The mikdashes will become desolate min hagdudiyos. What's the gdudiyos? So the Ravid says, afilu hagdudiyos. Pirish afilu yisoidos habayis yiyu shmomo k'dei shelo yehei lo zecher. That even the foundations of the Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed, so there'll be no zecher of the Mikdash. And that's what V'hashimoisi es Mikdashechem is saying. However, the Rashmi Shantz says, Chayolos shel oilei rigolim. The legions of oilei rigolim. That's what V'hashimoisi is referring to. There won't be oilei rigolim. L'chore, Rashi also learns like that in Chumash. Rashi says on the pasuk, V'hashimoisi es Mikdashechem yochel min hakorbanos. Kshehu oimer v'lo yoriach harei korbanos amurim. Omani mekayim v'hashimoisi es Mikdashechem min hagdudiyos. Shayorois shel Yisrael shehoyu miskatshois v'noyadois lovoi l'sham. That the Mikdash will be shamim from the groups, the caravans of Yidden that would prepare and gather to come there. So l'chore, Rashi's pshat and the Rashmi Shantz's pshat are the same. However, there is a difference because the word Mikdashechem, according to the Rashmi Shantz, means the Beis HaMikdash. It'll be shoymein from the oilei regolim that won't be coming there. Whereas Rashi is mefarish the word Mikdashechem not to mean the sanctuary, but miskachois, the shayorois shohayu miskachois, v'noyadois lavoi. In other words, miskachois miloshin preparing, like lahakdish lahazmin. Shehoyu miskachois v'noyadois lavoi l'sham. That would prepare and gather to come there. L'chayra, why did Rashi have to be moitzi the word mikdashechem mipshutai? Why couldn't he just learn like the Rash Mishans that the mikdash will be shomein from the oile regolim that used to come to the Beis HaMikdash? Why did Rashi have to change the meaning of the word mikdashechem? L'chayra, Rashi holds that the bittul of the aliyah l'regel is not an additional shmama in the Beis HaMikdash. It's not something that happens to the Beis HaMikdash. It's just something, it's a bittul of the choivas gavre of aliyah l'regel. Therefore, Rashi doesn't want to learn that I will make the mikdash desolate from the oile regol. Rashi learns that v'hashimoises mikdashechem means that the choivas gavre of aliyah l'regel will become bottle. That's how Rashi learns l'chor. How does the Rash Mishans Taka explain that Mikdashechem does mean the sanctuaries and the Vahashimoisi is the bittul of the Oile Regolim? That's l'chor, like the Rambam says in the beginning of Hilchos Beis Abchira. Mitzvahs asay lasois bayis la Hashem muchon liyois makriven boya korbanos v'choy gigin elov sholosh pa'amim bashono shenemar v'osuli mikdash. So you see that the oilim elov is a function of the Mikdash. It's part of the mitzvah of Binyan Beis HaMikdash, not only a Mikdash to bring korbanos, but a Mikdash to which there should be aliyah l'regel. So also in Shorish Yud Beis in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, the Rambam writes, Sheyeh lanu bayis muchon, yovoyu elov, v'yochoygu boy, uboy tiyeh ha'hakrova, uboy yiyeh ha'kibutz b'moyadim. So the gathering b'moyadim, the aliyah l'regel, is a function of the Beis HaMikdash. It's not just that Chayvas Gavra of Yeroi calls Churcha. The in Mitzvahs HaSeichof in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, the Rambam says Tzivonu livnois Beis HaBchira la'avoida boi tiyeh ha'hakrove, etc. The Elov tiyeh ha'haliche v'ha'aliyah l'regel v'ha'kibutz b'chol shona. So there are two things in the Beis HaMikdash: Hakroves Korbanos and Aliyah l'regel. And this is what the pasuk is saying. Vashimoisias mikdashechem is that there won't be aliyah l'regel to the Beis HaMikdash, that function will be discontinued. And v'lo yoriach bereach nichoichachem is that the function of makrivin by korbanos will become both. Okay, there's what to talk about. That if we're saying so, it's mashma that aliyah l'regel in principle is not connected with the Hakrovas HaKorban, but that's a discussion on its own. Now, Rashi that learns that Mikdashechem doesn't mean the Beis HaMikdash, but Mikdashechem means Shayoroi Shel Yisrael Shahoyu Miskachois V'Noyadois Lavoi, that Mikdashechem in this context means preparation and gathering for coming to the Beis HaMikdash. It would seem that he doesn't hold of this idea that the aliyah l'regel is part of the function of the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore Rashi is nitzchak l'faris that Mikdashechem over here doesn't mean the Beis HaMikdash, but it means the kiddush lavoi, the kiddush lavoi of the Gavra. But it's interesting that even the Rambam, when the Rambam in Mitzvahs HaSeichof says ve'elov tiyeh ha'haliche v'ha'aliyah l'regel. No, but let me ask like this. The really, even with Rashi, what is Rashi saying? That there'll be a bittul of the miskachois v'noyadois lovoi. L'chayra, the mitzvah is Yeroi kol schurcha. The miskachois v'noyadois lovoi is l'chayra not part of the mitzvah. That's a hechsher mitzvah. It's a preparation for the mitzvah. Why would the pasuk be emphasizing v'hashimoisias mikdashechem, that there'll be no gathering and there'll be no preparation for aliyah l'regel? But if you look in the Rambam Mitzvah Seichof, he says ve'elov tiyeh ha'haliche v'ha'aliyah l'regel v'ha'kibutz b'chol shona. So you see that not only the aliyah l'regel, but the haliche in itself is considered a mitzvah. The Ritva in Sukkot Daf Chafei says that V'chi teime kiven diksivu v'lechtecha v'derech sheniftar belechtoi lidvar mitzvah. That when somebody is on his way to do a mitzvah, he's considered an oisik b'mitzvah, potter ben mitzvah. Memela shamina k'sha oisik b'mitzvah mamish. We could learn oisik b'mitzvah, potter ben mitzvah b'kolshkin from halicha lidvar mitzvah. B'kolshkin hu v'lam ali b'shivtecha. If from Belechtecha Baderech we learn that a Hoylech Lidvar Mitzvah is Potem and a Mitzvah, Avada B'Shivtecha, which is the Isaac B'Mitzvah Mamish, is Potem and a Mitzvah. Yeshloima de Eloi Kosav Ela Belechtecha B'Lchud. If the pasuk would only say Belechtecha Baderech B'Lchud, have a Mukmin on law, we would say that the pasuk is talking Kisha Mitzvah Hi B'Halicha Atzma. We would say that the pasuk is referring to a case where the Halicha is in itself the Mitzvah. Shu Isaac B'Mitzvah Mamish. So we need the two psukim, Belechtecha and B'Shivtecha, because once we know from B'Shivtecha the Oisik b'mitzvah mamish, we know that Belechtecha is teaching me somebody that's going to do a mitzvah, even where the halicha in itself is not a mitzvah. But if I wouldn't have the two psukim, I would say that Belechtecha is talking about a halicha that's in itself a mitzvah. Like, we understand the halicha itself is a mitzvah. Also the halicha itself is a mitzvah. But the aliyah leregel, the mitzvah is yeroi kol schurcha. And the aliyah is not hiyatzma mitzvah. There it was mafurish that in aliyah leregel, the journey is in itself a mitzvah. The Rabbeinu Bachye in the end of Parshas Mishpatim brings up sikta sholosh rigolim azhar li Yisrael shelo yalu ela beragleihem v'chein hakosav oimer mayofu pa'amayich banaolim basnodiv. So you see once again that you shouldn't go with a horse and buggy. You should go by foot. I say that the going in itself has value in itself. But it's interesting. The mitzvah is riyas ponim ba'azora. Why would the halicha be considered a mitzvah in itself? We find the concept of halicha, yitziyah, and kibbutz not only by aliyah l'regel, but also with regards to Kabbalah's Shabbos. The Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos Perek Lamed says, "V'chachamim harishonim hoyu mekabtzin talmideihem be'erev Shabbos umisatfim v'oimrim boyu v'neitzei likras Shabbos hamelech." So you see that the Kvoid HaMelech is mechayev, a yitziyah likrosoi, and kibbutz. Now the yitziyah likrosoi, we understand the shaykh to covet that I'm being makbil v'pnei HaMelech. The kibbutz, we would understand, is because of Barava Madras Melech. But it would seem that it's not that we're looking for the Barav on its own. But the kibbutz is part of the Hakbolas Pnei HaMelech. Because like the Rambam says in Sefer HaMitzvahs, Kufa and Gimel, Hishet Tzivonu Lemanois Oleinu Melech Yekabetz Kol Umaseinu V'yanhigenu. So the kibbutz is really shayach to the melech. Befrat benegeh to malchus shamayim, vayhi bishurun melech behis asef roshei om. Yachad shivtei Yisrael. Rashi says behis asfam yachad ba'aguda achas v'sholem beineim hu malkam v'loik sheyesh machlokes beineim. So maybe we understand that in the Yitzir likras the melech malchei amlochim hakodesh baruch hu, it's ba'ofen of a kibbutz davke. Boyu v'neitzei likras. In the Parsha of Matan Torah, it says v'hayu nechoinim layoim hashlishi. So the Brisker Rav al Torah says al asar shehiu muchonim u'mezumonim lazeh. V'yesh loymar duhu dukmas ma shemotzinu barambam v'yoshev b'koived roish u'miyachel lahakbolas pnei haShabbos k'mo shu yotzei likras hamelech. Harei dezeu kvoidoi shel melech. So that's the hachon. Uksiv achakach vayotzei Moshe esaom Likraso Elokim, min hamachane, v'hainu, shehayitzia atzmo min hamachane likras ho'elokim, hoisa din u'mitzvah, v'hoisa al pi Moshe, v'zohi dugmas boyu v'neitzei likras Shabbos Malkasa. Like Rashi on the pasuk says, "Likras Elokim magid shashchina yotza likrasam kechosna yotza likras kala," and like we say, "Lechodoidi likras kala pnei Shabbos nekabla." He comes towards us, we go towards him. So this is all part of the. It says the Brisker of Shekol zeh mechvoid hamelech k'deisa b'Rambam shem sheyiyu yotzim likrasei. So you see, by Matan Torah, we also find not only the Yitzia likras, but also the kibbutz. Vayichan shom Yisrael neged Behar ki ish echad. Believe echad. So that it would seem that that's the yisoid of the halicha and the kibbutz. Rashi says, mikdeshechem is the kibbutz. Is the noyadois miskabtzois for aliyah leregel. Because Yeroi kol schurcha is the hakbolas pnei ashchina. Yeroi kol schurcha is pnei odoin. Hashem Elokecha is hakbolas pnei ashchina. And when we're talking about Hakbolas Pnei Ashchina, just like we see by Matan Torah, and just like we see by Shabbos, the Halicha and the Kibbutz are part of the thing in itself. But according to the Rambam, the Kibbutz is in the Mikdash, and the Halicha itself doesn't have to be the Kibbutz. But in Rashi, it's Mavur that the Gdudiyos are the Shayoroi Shel Yisrael, Shoyu Miskachois V'noyadois Lovei L'Sham. In other words, the hiluch in itself was bekibbutz. Now, we say, Oyave Hashem ha'mechakim bevinyan Ariel b'yoyim ha'Shabbos sisu v'simchu k'mekablei matan achliel. So we already spoke that this is understood according to the Ramban, who says that the kvoid Hashem asher shochan al har Sinai b'golui hu hashoichein b'mishkon b'nistor. So Shabbos, is the parallel in time to what the Mikdash is in space, and therefore the Oyave Hashem, Hamachakim Bevinyan Ariel, for the sanctuary in space, nevertheless, B'yom HaShabbos Sisu V'Simchu, with the sanctuary in time, Kimekablei Matan Echliel, because the Mekablei Matan Echliel was zoichet to that Gilu Shchina, which on Shabbos we could also be zoichet to without the sanctuary in space. And that's why we find in all these three, in the Mikdash, in Shabbos, and in Sinai, both the kibbutz and the hiluch, because it's all about Hakbolas Pnei Ashchina. Now in Sanhedrin Daf Mem Beis, we state Tana de Rabbi Yishmael. We recognize this from Kiddush Levana. Hey, Lamole lo yizachu Yisrael lahagbil pnei avim shebashamayim elo pam achas b'chodesh dayom. Amar Abaye hilkoch tzarich l'meim remol. In other words, since this is, as Rashi says, hilkoch hoyel umekabel pnei ashchinahu ma'umed boyel lebruchi. Since this is an act of Hakbolas Pnei Ashchina Kiddush Levana, therefore you have to make Kiddush Levana standing. So the Gemara continues, Mereimer umar zutre mekatvi ahadodi umavarchi. They would lean on each other's shoulders and make the bracha of Kiddush Levana. So the Yad Ramah says that since they were old and they couldn't stand, so they would lean on each other because it's a kula that smicha in this case is muter b'di'eved, azoy state in the Yad Ramah. However, in the Tur, Siman Tov Chavov, he says, Mereimer v'Rav Ashi mekasvi lohu u'mavorchi, pirush derech chashivus lahagbo pnei Ashchina. That Mereimer and Rav Ashi felt, Mereimer and Mazutra felt that the derech shivus lahagbo pnei Ashchina is by leaning on each other's shoulder. I mean, why in the world is this the derech shivus lahagbo pnei Ashchina? So the Bach says, Nire sherotzo loymar, sheloi hoya oimeid, Kol echad b'fnei atzmo u'mevorech. Elo nischabru yachad kisveihem la'adodi, shezeu derech shivus lahagbo pnei Ashchina. So the Bach is saying that Hakbolas Pnei Ashchina is not an individual matter. As long as you're standing on your own by yourself, that's not a way to be Mekabel Pnei Ashchina. The way to be Mekabel Pnei Ashchina is to connect with another person. and therefore they leaned on each other's shoulders. That's the derech shivus lahagla pnei hashchina. No, you know what it says in the Sefer Tanya Perek Lamed Beis. He says al yedei kiyum advorim anal liyois gufoi nivze v'nimas be'enov rak simchosoi tia simchas hanefesh levado harezu derech yishora v'kala lovoi lidei kiyum mitzvahs v'haftu yachad kamoicha l'chol nefesh miyisrael migodl v'ad kot. In other words, if a person identifies with his inner real self, he will be able to be mekayim v'haftu l'yachad kamoicha. Ki meyachar shegufoi nimas umetuav etzloi v'hanefesh v'haruach mi yoidea gduloson uma'aloson b'shorshon u'mekorim b'elakim chayim v'shegam shekulan mas'imois v'av echad l'kulona v'lechein nikru kol Yisrael achim mamish mitzat shorish nafshon b'Hashem echad rak she'agufim mechulokim v'lechein ha'oisim gufam iker v'nafshom tvela ef sheliois ava v'achva amitis beineim elo hatluya b'daba levada. זהו שם ההילל הזוקן, על קיום מצווה זו, זהו כל התורה, כולו ואידך פירושו הוא, כי יסוד ושורש כל התורה הוא להגביה ולהליס הנפש על הגוף. So, in other words, through the ואהבת לרעך כמוך is אני Hashem. In other words, because ואהבת לרעך כמוך is that I magbir the nefesh on the guf, and all the chilukim between people is based on the guf and what comes with the guf, the nefesh abahamis, our character traits, but not the neshama in itself. And it's av echad l'kulona. So Mamela, you access the Ani Hashem. So Lefiza, the kibbutz, which is the chibur between one and another, is part of the journey of the halicha likraso elokim la'akbalas pnei hashchina. The vayichan shom Yisrael neged ahor ki ish echad b'leiv echad. That's the journey towards the shchina through the mekasvi ha'adadi that I give a shoulder to somebody else, I'm a kabel pnei hashchina. And that's why the Amoraim were mekabtzin talmideyem, and they said, boyu v'neitzei likras kalo. Because only through the keish echad b'leiv echad can there be a vayotzei Moshe esa'om likras olikim min hamachane. No, you know that the Mishnah says, Reb Chalafti ish kvar chanan yoim, asora sheyoishim voiskim b'torah, Shchina shuri beineim, shenem elikim nitzav adas kelu, menayin afil l'chamisha v'chuli, menayin afil l'shloisha, menayin afil l'shnayim, menayin afil l'echad. Shenem b'chol ha'mokim asher azke eshmi, ovoi eilecha uveirachticha. So, the shiur of the kibbutz is really what's koiveya, the darge of hashros hashchina. There's a darge of asoro sheyoishvim. There's a darg of chamisha, of shloisha, but the pshat is that limud HaTorah is always a halicha likrasa elikim, as we say, kol talmud chacham sheyoshev v'oisik b'Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu yoshev kinegdoi v'korev v'shoynei imoi. We learn from the pasuk v'oidatam levanecha v'levnei vanecha yoim asher amadeto lefnei Hashem Elokecha v'chorev. We learn that whenever a yid learns Torah, it's a chazorah on the Maimed Har Sinai, because ma lahalon be'eme b'yira b'reses u'b'ziyah afkan be'eme b'yira u'b'reses u'b'ziyah. So learning Torah is really a yitziyah l'krasa Elokim, just like the Matan Torah came about through a yitziyah l'krasa Elokim vayotzei Moshe esa'om l'krasa Elokim. So also every time a Yid learns Torah, it's a Yitziyah L'Krasa Elokim. It would seem that the Omol in the Maisa of Talmud Torah is because of the dimension of Hakbolas Pnei Hashchina that there is in Matan Torah. In other words, in other mitzvahs we don't find Omol, but in Talmud Torah, which is Hakbolas Pnei Hashchina, you need to have Hakboras Hanefesh alaguf, and the Yitziyah from ourselves, Likrasa Elokim. The Gur Aryeh over here on Bechukosai Telechu, he says, Shahalicha hi Yitziyah mi mokim lemokim, v'kach gam ha'omol, she'al yodahu yotzim im koimai hativi. So you see that omol is also a hiluch, just like there's a physical hiluch from one geographical location to another. there's a hiluch from one mental state to another, and there's a hiluch of exiting your own self, likraso elokim. So Mamela, the hiluch in itself is a mitzvah, as we say, ilu kervanu, l'fnei har Sinai, v'lo nasalanu esatayra, dayenu. So even if we toil in Torah and we don't get to the bottom line, avada the yitzia likraso elokim is he atzma mitzvah, and like the Ritva says with regards to aliyah l'regel, that it's considered a mitzvah in itself. And the Maharsham in his Sefer Tchelas Mordechai and Parshas Dvarim, in Parshas Dvarim he says that on the pasuk, it says like this. It says, "Samachti ba'oimrim li, beis Hashem neilech, oim daisoyu ragleinu b'sharayich Yerushalayim." So he says that the simcha that they had during the hiluch, Samachti ba'oimrim li, beis Hashem neilech, they felt as if oim daisoyu ragleinu b'sharayich Yerushalayim. In other words, that the simcha of the hiluch was as great as the simcha of being there. The journey is just as important as the destination. Okay, Rabbi Sai, that's it for now.